No, I don't think I did anything unforgivable, and honestly, I'm tired of everyone acting like I committed some horrible crime. My boyfriend Ethan stormed out after our fight, ignored my calls for 6 hours, and left me feeling like complete garbage. So when my ex Marcus texted just to check in, what was I supposed to do, cry alone in my apartment? People always say communication matters, and at least Marcus still knew how to listen to me when I needed someone. Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. What city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. Now, let's get back to the story. We didn't even sleep together, he just slept over. It was one night of having someone there who actually cared about how I was feeling. But apparently, one night is all it takes to ruin everything you've built with someone and destroy 2 years of love because of one moment of weakness when you needed comfort. The worst part is that Ethan came back the next morning wanting to talk things out and make up like he always does after our fights. I heard his key in the door at 8:30, and my heart jumped because I'd been waiting all night for him to come home and apologize for the things he said. But then I remembered Marcus was still there, and panic hit me like a truck. Ethan walked in and saw Marcus's shoes by the door, size 12 black sneakers that definitely weren't mine, sitting right there in the entryway like a neon sign advertising my betrayal. I heard Ethan stop moving, and then his footsteps getting slower as he walked toward the living room where Marcus was still asleep on my couch. I rushed out of my bedroom in just a hoodie and shorts trying to get to the living room before Ethan saw anything, but I was too late. He was standing there staring at Marcus, who was shirtless and obviously had slept there, and the look on Ethan's face was pure devastation mixed with rage. I'd never seen him look at me like that before. Marcus woke up when he heard voices and sat up all confused and shirtless, and the situation went from bad to catastrophic in about 2 seconds. Ethan looked at me and asked what this was, and I could hear in his voice that he already knew exactly what it looked like, even though it wasn't what it looked like at all. I tried to explain that nothing happened and that Marcus just came over because I was upset and needed someone to talk to, but Ethan wasn't listening. He was staring at Marcus like he wanted to kill him, and then he looked at me like he didn't even know who I was anymore. The disappointment in his eyes was worse than if he'd just started yelling. Ethan told me he came back to apologize for walking out and for the things he said during our fight. He said he'd been driving around all night thinking about how much he loved me and how stupid our argument was, and he wanted to make things right. But now he realized there was nothing left to make right because I'd already moved on to someone else. I kept trying to tell him that Marcus and I didn't do anything physical and that he just stayed over as a friend. But Ethan said it didn't matter what we did or didn't do. He said the fact that I called another man when we were having problems told him everything he needed to know about how I really felt about our relationship. Marcus finally got dressed and left without saying much of anything, which honestly made everything worse because it looked like he was running away from getting caught doing something wrong. I begged Ethan to sit down and let me explain what really happened, but he was already walking toward the door with his overnight bag. He turned around before he left and told me that he said maybe we needed a break, but he never said we needed to break up. He said he thought I understood the difference, but apparently he was wrong about that too. Then he walked out, and this time I knew he wasn't coming back to apologize in a few hours. I spent the rest of that day texting and calling Ethan trying to get him to listen to my side of what happened, but he wouldn't answer. I left voicemails explaining that Marcus and I have been friends for years, and that nothing romantic happened between us, and that I would never cheat on someone I love. But apparently being emotionally unfaithful is just as bad as being physically unfaithful in Ethan's mind. The thing is, I really don't understand why this has to be the deal breaker that ends everything between us. I didn't cheat on him. I didn't sleep with Marcus. I didn't even kiss him or do anything that crossed any physical boundaries. All I did was let someone comfort me when the person who's supposed to comfort me decided to abandon me instead. I've been thinking about this for weeks now, and I still don't see how having a friend sleep on my couch is grounds for ending a 2-year relationship. Yes, Marcus is my ex-boyfriend, but we broke up 3 years ago, and we've been just friends ever since. Ethan knew we still talked occasionally, and he never had a problem with it before this happened. The fight that started all of this was actually about Marcus, which makes the whole situation even more frustrating. Ethan had been getting jealous about me texting with Marcus and wanted me to cut off all contact with him completely. I told Ethan that was unreasonable because Marcus and I have mutual friends, and I see him at parties and group events anyway, so pretending he doesn't exist would be impossible. Ethan said he didn't care about seeing Marcus at parties, but he didn't want me having private conversations with him anymore. He said it made him uncomfortable knowing I was texting with an ex-boyfriend, and that if I really loved him, I would respect his feelings about it. I told him he was being controlling and insecure, and that I wasn't going to let him dictate who I could be friends with. That's when Ethan lost it, and started yelling about how I always defend Marcus and always take his side when there's any conflict about him. He said it was obvious I still had feelings for Marcus, and that maybe I should just go be with him since I cared so much about protecting our friendship. I yelled back that he was being ridiculous and paranoid, and that his jealousy was ruining our relationship. Ethan grabbed his keys and said maybe we did need a break if I couldn't understand why he was upset about me being so close with my ex. He said he needed space to think about whether he could be with someone who prioritized another man's feelings over his own. Then he walked out and didn't answer when I called after him. I sat there for about an hour feeling angry and hurt and abandoned. Ethan had walked out on me in the middle of a fight, which he'd never done before, and I didn't know if he was coming back or if this was his way of breaking up with me. I felt like he'd chosen his pride over our relationship and left me to deal with all the emotional fallout alone. That's when Marcus texted me asking how I was doing because he'd seen on social media that I seemed upset about something. I know I probably should have ignored the message given that we'd literally just fought about him, but I was feeling so lonely and hurt that I needed someone to talk to who would actually listen. I told Marcus that Ethan and I had a huge fight about him, and that Ethan walked out and wasn't answering my calls. Marcus said he was sorry for causing problems between us and offered to come over with wine and ice cream to help cheer me up. I said yes because I needed comfort, and Ethan had made it clear he wasn't going to provide any. Marcus came over around 9 with groceries to make dinner and a bottle of wine, and he listened while I cried and vented about everything that had happened. He told me that Ethan was being unreasonable and controlling, and that I deserved better than someone who would abandon me during a fight. It felt good to have someone validate my feelings instead of making me feel like I was crazy. We talked until almost 2 in the morning about relationships and feelings and what went wrong between Ethan and me. Marcus said he could sleep on the couch since it was so late, and he'd had wine and shouldn't drive home. I said that was fine because I didn't want to be alone, and having someone there made me feel less abandoned and pathetic. Nothing happened between us that night. We didn't kiss or touch or do anything remotely sexual. Marcus slept on the couch in his clothes, and I slept in my own bed alone. We were just 2 friends helping each other through a difficult night, and there was nothing inappropriate about any of it, except for the fact that Ethan would probably see it as a betrayal. I woke up the next morning hoping Ethan would call or text to apologize for walking out on me, but my phone was empty. I made coffee for Marcus, and we talked about whether I should reach out to Ethan first or wait for him to contact me. Marcus said I should probably let Ethan cool off for a few more hours before trying to have a serious conversation about what happened. That's when we heard the key in the door and realized Ethan was coming back. Marcus was still shirtless because he'd gotten warm during the night and taken his shirt off while he was sleeping. I was in my pajamas, which was just a hoodie and shorts, but it looked like I'd been sleeping with someone, which wasn't true, but appearances matter more than truth sometimes. The look on Ethan's face when he saw Marcus on my couch will haunt me forever. It was like watching someone's heart break in real time and knowing you were the one holding the hammer. I tried to explain, but he was already shutting down and building walls, and deciding that everything he thought he knew about me was a lie. Marcus tried to help by explaining that nothing happened and that he just slept over as a friend, but that made things worse somehow. Ethan said he didn't want to hear explanations from the man who was sleeping on his girlfriend's couch and told Marcus to get out of his apartment. Marcus left quickly to avoid making the situation worse, but his leaving looked like guilt, even though he had nothing to be guilty about. After Marcus left, I begged Ethan to sit down and let me tell him exactly what happened and why Marcus was there. I explained about feeling abandoned after he walked out and needing someone to talk to, and Marcus offering to come over as a friend. I swore on everything I hold dear that nothing physical happened between us and that I would never cheat on him. But Ethan said it didn't matter what did or didn't happen physically, because I'd already cheated emotionally by turning to another man when we were having problems. He said the fact that I called Marcus instead of trying harder to reach him showed where my real loyalties were, and that he couldn't trust me anymore. I told him that I did try to reach him, but he wouldn't answer his calls or texts, and that I felt completely alone and abandoned. I said I needed comfort and support, and since he wasn't providing any, I had to find it somewhere else. That just made him angrier because he said I was blaming him for my own choices. Ethan said that when he said we needed a break, he meant a few hours apart to cool down, not permission for me to have other men sleep over. He said he thought I understood that we were still together and exclusive, even if we were taking space to work through our problems. But apparently I saw it as an opportunity to do whatever I wanted with whoever I wanted. I kept trying to make him understand that Marcus and I are just friends, and that having him sleep on my couch wasn't romantic or sexual or anything more than friendship. But Ethan said he didn't care about the technical details because the emotional betrayal was just as damaging as a physical one would have been. He said he came back ready to apologize and work on our problems, but now he realized our problems were bigger than he thought. He said if I could turn to my ex-boyfriend for comfort that easily, then maybe I wasn't as committed to our relationship as he'd believed. Then he packed a bag and said he needed real space this time, not just a few hours. I haven't heard from Ethan in 3 weeks now, and he's blocked my number and all my social media accounts. I've tried calling him from other phones and reaching out through mutual friends, but he won't respond to anything. It's like I've been completely erased from his life over one night of innocent comfort from a friend. The worst part is that Marcus has been acting weird ever since that morning too. He texts me occasionally to ask how I'm doing, but he's not really available to hang out or talk like he used to be. I think he feels guilty about causing problems between Ethan and me, even though none of this is really his fault. I've lost my boyfriend and my friend in one stupid misunderstanding, and everyone thinks I'm the one who messed up. My sister says I should have known better than to let my ex sleep over when I was having relationship problems. My friends say they understand why Ethan is upset, even if I didn't technically cheat. But I still don't think I did anything wrong enough to deserve losing the love of my life over it. Yes, maybe I should have been more careful about appearances, and maybe I should have thought about how it would look if Ethan came back unexpectedly. But I was hurting, and I needed someone there, and Marcus was offering genuine friendship and comfort. I miss Ethan so much, it physically hurts sometimes. I miss texting him throughout the day and having him come home to me every night and planning our future together. We were talking about moving in together officially and maybe getting engaged next year, and now all of that is gone because of one night. I keep replaying that morning over and over, wondering what I could have said differently to make him listen to me. If I'd had more time to explain before he saw Marcus, maybe I could have made him understand that it wasn't what it looked like. But he made up his mind in those first few seconds, and nothing I said after that mattered. Sometimes I wonder if Ethan was looking for an excuse to break up with me, and finding Marcus there just gave him the perfect reason. Maybe our relationship wasn't as strong as I thought it was, and this was just the final straw after months of smaller problems. Maybe he never really trusted me, and this confirmed all his worst fears about me. But most of the time, I think he really did love me, and this really did break his heart, as much as it broke mine. I think he wanted to work things out when he came back that morning, and seeing Marcus destroyed something inside him that can't be repaired. I think he's hurting just as much as I am, but his pride won't let him forgive me. I started therapy to try to understand my own role in what happened and whether I really am as innocent as I believe I am. My therapist asks hard questions about emotional boundaries and whether I was using Marcus to avoid dealing with problems in my relationship with Ethan. She makes me examine my motivations in ways that are uncomfortable but probably necessary. Maybe I did turn to Marcus too quickly when things got difficult with Ethan. Maybe I should have tried harder to reach Ethan or given him more time to cool down before seeking comfort elsewhere. Maybe the fact that I still felt comfortable enough with my ex to have him sleep over means I wasn't as over him as I thought I was. But even if I made mistakes, I still don't think they were unforgivable mistakes. I think Ethan overreacted and threw away something beautiful over a misunderstanding that could have been worked through if he'd been willing to listen. I think his jealousy and insecurity destroyed us more than anything I actually did. 6 months later, I'm still single and still missing Ethan every day. I see him sometimes around town with other people, and he looks happy, which hurts more than I expected it to. I want him to be happy, but I also want him to miss me at least a little bit, and it doesn't look like he does. I heard through friends that he's dating someone new now, and that makes me feel sick to my stomach. The idea of him touching someone else and saying sweet things to her, and building a future with her when he won't even speak to me, is almost unbearable. I gave him 2 years of my life, and she gets to benefit from all the lessons he learned with me. Marcus and I don't talk anymore either, which is probably for the best, but it makes me sad because I lost 2 important relationships over one night. He sends me happy birthday messages and likes my social media posts occasionally, but we're not really friends anymore. Too much damage was done, and too many feelings were hurt for us to go back to how things were. I still have the last photo Ethan and I took together, saved on my phone, even though looking at it makes me cry every time. We looked so happy and so in love and so sure that we'd figured out how to make it work forever. Neither of us knew that 3 days later everything would fall apart over something so stupid and preventable. Sometimes I whisper to that photo that I did love him, and I still love him, and I would take it all back if I could. I would handle that night differently and make different choices, and find a way to work through our problems without involving anyone else. But you can't undo betrayal, even when it's not the kind of betrayal everyone thinks it was. I scroll through our old messages sometimes and read all the sweet things he used to say to me and all the plans we made together. He called me his forever person and said he couldn't imagine his life without me in it. But apparently forever has an expiration date, and mine was the morning he found Marcus on my couch. The damage is done now, and there's no going back to fix it or explain it or make it right. I'm left with silence and blame and the knowledge that I lost the best thing that ever happened to me over one night of needing comfort from the wrong person. That's a mistake I'll have to live with for the rest of my life, even though I still don't think it was unforgivable. I tried dating other people after 6 months of being alone, but every single guy felt wrong compared to Ethan. They were either too clingy or too distant or too boring or too exciting, but none of them were him. None of them knew how I liked my coffee or remembered my favorite movies or understood my sense of humor the way he did. There was this one guy named David who seemed promising at first because he was completely different from Ethan in every way. He was spontaneous where Ethan was planned and artistic where Ethan was practical and emotionally expressive, where Ethan was more reserved. I thought maybe dating someone opposite would help me move on faster. But 3 weeks into dating David, I realized I was just using him as a distraction from missing Ethan. Every time David did something sweet, I found myself wishing it was Ethan doing it instead. When David surprised me with concert tickets, I thought about how Ethan would have checked with me first to make sure I was free. When David wrote me poetry, I missed Ethan's simple text messages asking about my day. I broke up with David because it wasn't fair to him and it wasn't helping me heal. He deserved someone who was excited about him, not someone who was comparing him to her ex-boyfriend constantly. I realized I needed to be alone longer and figure out how to stop measuring every new person against someone I couldn't have anymore. My therapist said I was stuck in the bargaining stage of grief, where I kept trying to find ways to undo what happened or prove that I wasn't really wrong. She said I needed to accept that even if I didn't technically cheat, I had still violated Ethan's trust in a way that he couldn't forgive. The intention didn't matter as much as the impact. That was hard to hear because I'd been holding on to the belief that being technically innocent meant I deserved forgiveness. But trust isn't about technicalities, and once it's broken, it doesn't matter how good your reasons were for breaking it. Ethan felt betrayed, whether I meant to betray him or not, and that feeling was valid, even if my actions were justifiable. I started writing letters to Ethan that I never sent, just to get all my thoughts and feelings out of my head. I wrote about how sorry I was for hurting him, and how much I missed him, and how I would handle everything differently if I could go back. I wrote about all the good times we had together, and all the plans we'd made for the future that would never happen now. Writing those letters helped me process my grief, but it also made me realize how much of our relationship I'd taken for granted. I'd assumed we were solid enough to survive any fight, and that our love was strong enough to overcome any misunderstanding. I'd never considered that one night could destroy everything we'd built together over 2 years. The worst part about losing Ethan wasn't just losing him as a boyfriend, but losing him as my best friend too. He was the person I told everything to and shared all my thoughts with and planned my future around. When something good happened, he was the first person I wanted to call. And when something bad happened, he was the only person who could make me feel better. Now, when good things happen, I have no one to share them with, and when bad things happen, I have to deal with them alone. I got a promotion at work 3 months after our breakup, and my first instinct was to text Ethan because he'd been so supportive of my career goals. But I couldn't text him, and celebrating alone felt hollow and meaningless. I started having panic attacks around the 1-year anniversary of our breakup because the grief hit me all over again, like it was fresh. I'd convinced myself I was getting better and moving on, but then the date approached, and I realized I'd just been avoiding my feelings instead of processing them. The anniversary of losing him felt like losing him all over again. I still think about that morning sometimes when Ryan and I have fights or when something reminds me of Ethan. I wonder what would have happened if I'd made different choices that night, or if Ethan had been more willing to forgive me. But I've learned that you can't build a future on what-ifs and regrets, so I try to focus on what I have instead of what I lost. The damage is done, and there's no going back to fix it, or explain it, or make it right. I'm married to someone who loves me, and we're building a life together that's different from what I had with Ethan, but good in its own way. That's a kind of healing I never thought would be possible during those first dark months after everything fell apart.